And we're live. Hello, book lovers. Welcome to the 145th episode of Authors Love Bookstores, broadcasting here on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Kimberly Hensel-Lawrence. If you're new to the Blaze, welcome. We're a group of volunteer creatives who host online literary events to support books, authors, and the wider publishing community. Here on Authors Love Bookstores, my co-host, Joe Moldover, and I shine a light on storytelling, creativity, and bookstores, the small businesses that enrich and enliven our communities. Since our show's launch, we've featured bookstores in every U.S. state, plus Puerto Rico, Washington, D.C., Canada, England, and Scotland. Today, we are traveling back across the pond, as we say here in the U.S., to Birmingham, England, to welcome our guest, Mike Gayle. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're thrilled to have you. And in case our audience has noticed, Mike and I got the memo about dressing to match the cover of his book. I was excited to have something yellow in my closet and to talk about the Museum of Ordinary People. But before we do that, let me tell you a little bit about Mike. Here we go. Mike was born and raised in Birmingham in the United Kingdom. After earning a sociology degree, he moved to London to become a journalist. And as life would have it, he became the advice columnist for a teenage girls magazine and then became the features editor for another teen magazine. So, I'm going to ask about this. He has written for a number of publications and he became a full-time novelist in 1997 following the publication of his first best-selling book, My Legendary Girlfriend, which has been described as a funny, frank account of a hopeless romantic. He has written 19 works of fiction, 19 novels, and 1 work of nonfiction. So that's 20 books for those of you who are counting. And I know that I am very impressed by that number. And these books have been translated into over 30 languages. Welcome again, Mike. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed this book. I'm really excited to talk about it. I wanted to just remind our audience, if you have questions for Mike, we would love to hear them. Please put them in a comment below the broadcast, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, and we'll get to as many as we can during the show. So congratulations. I have to tell you, I have this hobby, which is when I go to independent bookstores and I look for the books of the guests that I've hosted on the show or will soon host. And so I've done this number of times for the past couple months, and I saw your book everywhere, like every bookstore.
Fantastic.
I was in Martha's Vineyard here in Massachusetts. I saw it there. I saw it in Maine. I saw it in Vermont. Everywhere I've gone, your book has been on the bookstore shelf, which was so exciting to see. You're smiling. Is that unexpected?
Oh, and now you're back again.
I'm vlogging. Oh no, I'm sorry.
Sorry. So what was? I just missed that last bit.
Just that I saw your book everywhere.
Thank you so much.
Oh, looks like we lost your sound for a second. So I don't know. I am having a hard time hearing you. You sound just went out for a brief moment.
Right.
Now you're back.
Right. Okay. And now I've frozen.
Oh no. Well, you're frozen, but I can hear you. So let's see if our producer Joe. There you go. There you're back again.
Right. I'm back. I'm trying to quit out of anything that I don't.
Okay, great. So we'll do. We should have done that check before. So apologies to our viewers for the technical snafus.
Okay. Yes, we're back. Okay.
We're back.
Yes. It's great. It's great. This is so I was published in the States with My Legendary Girlfriend and Mr. Commitment and Turning 13 Dinner for Two back in the kind of late 90s, early 2000s, and then there was a big gap. And so when I managed to get All the Lonely People was published in the States, and that was a big hit over there. And so it's nice to be. It's the kind of icing on the cake.
Yes, I can imagine it's a wonderful feeling to have
it's absolutely amazing.
and to be connecting with readers. Yeah. So the reviews about the book are terrific. Kirkus calls the Museum of Ordinary People pure, unadulterated feel good, and also calls you a master puller of heartstrings. Another review called you the king of touching human stories, and calls this book a joyful celebration of life. You also got a whole bunch of must-read books for 2023 here in the US. And again, I saw it everywhere I went. Can you tell our audience a little bit about the Museum of Ordinary People?
Kind of the main action takes place. Oh, have I frozen again?
You're back now.
The main action kind of takes place a year after her mum has passed away, and so we kind of got two timelines. So in the main timeline, it's a year on from having lost a mum, but in the kind of past timeline, it's the immediate aftermath of losing a mum, and she has to her different emotions. But there's a particular set of things that really mean a lot to Jess, which is a set of encyclopedias that her mum gave her when she was only a little girl, and these sort of encyclopedias sort of represent her mum's hopes and dreams for her in terms of education, saying that the world's your oyster, and stuck by the door, and a year on, she hasn't done anything with them, and events occur that mean that she has to get rid of them. She can't keep them anymore.
So Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
They're out of date, and people, nobody wants them at all. She can't sell them. Nobody wants them. She is about to throw them away when her best friend calls her and tells her about this place called the Museum of Ordinary People, and it's a museum that exists solely to treat the ordinary belongings of ordinary people in the same way that you would do the museum.
So
of a house clearance company, but Jess, when she sees the museum for the first time, she falls in love, and she sees something really special in there, and she feels like with her experience she can turn it into something really special.
So Mike, I hate to do this to you, but we're losing you every 15 seconds.
Oh no!
And our audience is amazing. Yes, Kim, yes, Alexandra, everyone's being really patient, but we are losing you every couple of seconds. And so
right.
I'm going to make the like terrible suggestion that you log out and log back in.
Okay, I shall do that.
Because I think
apologies, everybody. I will be back in.
So don't go away. Shortly. You'll have me. I'll stay here, and Mike will come right back. Let's try that. Thanks everyone for staying with us. We've never had this happen before. I just think the connection is tricky on Mike's side. And so I'll just give you a little bit of the summary of what he was talking about. The Museum of Ordinary People is about a young woman named Jess who in one timeline experiences the loss of her mother, a very difficult loss. I'm sure many of us have been in those shoes. And she struggles with what to do with her mother's home and all of her mother's belongings. And then in the other storyline, it's a year later, and the book examines where her life is at that point, how she's doing, and her relationship with her best friend, her boyfriend. And it's also in that timeline that she discovers something called the Museum of Ordinary People. And it's a small unofficial museum in the back of a factory or building in a section of London that Mike would know better than I. And there she meets the people who work at this museum and a mysterious man named Alex who has recently inherited the business and the museum. And she kind of falls in love with what the museum is doing, and it unearths a passion of hers that had been missing for a long time. And it's a real like meaningful story about loss and about finding your way and about finding your people. And so I hope people will check it out, the Museum of Ordinary People. And we're putting links to purchase the book from a couple of bookstores in Birmingham that Mike frequents. One of them is the Heath Bookshop, and the other is Bookstore on the Green. And again, we'll put those links below. And then we'll also include links for purchasing Mike's book from a US vendor. For those of you who are watching in the US, you can pick it up at bookshop.org, which is a great business that supports indie bookstores. And if you have questions for Mike, this is a great time to put them below, and we'll have them queued up for when he returns. And I know if you're just logging in now, you're thinking, I am not Mike Gayle, and no, I am not. Mike is having some technical difficulties and just popped off, and we're going to have him hopefully pop on in any second. Until then, I, Kimberly, the host, am filling the time here telling you about Mike's terrific books. And we're also going to include some links below to Mike's website. He has a really terrific website where you can learn all about his books, also his writing process, some more about events he has coming up, also links to his social media. He has a lot of really great events coming up later this year. He has an event with Jojo Moyes. For those of you who enjoy her writing, I know she's very popular. I've read Me Before You, and I'm sure many of you have done that as well. I'd also love to hear from our audience. What is your favorite Mike Gayle book? Did you read The Museum of Ordinary People and love it? What about Legendary Girlfriend? That was his first book and got bestseller, really successful here in the US as well. He also, the book before this, Only the Lonely People, also very successful. So we'd love, yes, please stand by. We're hoping to get Mike back very soon. So just give us a little bit of your patience. But again, while we're waiting for Mike, please put your questions below for him. We're going to ask him more about his favorite indie bookstores. We're going to ask him about here he is. Let me put him back in. Are you back? Oh, we still have a sound problem.
Devices, so we'll be all right.
Okay, you're all right. Great. Thank you. I was filling everybody in on your synopsis of the book.
Yeah.
I pretended I was Mike Gayle just for a moment. I'm sure you didn't do it justice. But I wondered if you could tell our audience what was the spark for this book. What made you decide to write The Museum of Ordinary People?
Back again?
Now you're back again.
Right.
Great. So what was your
Okay, yes. Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, the question was, what was your inspiration for writing this book?
The inspiration, so it came from a friend of mine. He is a vintage furniture dealer, and he was walking past a skip in Birmingham, where I live, and he saw a skip that was obviously the house was being cleared, and whoever lived there had passed away, and the house was being emptied, and loads of stuff was being thrown away. And my friend can't resist having a little look in a skip and seeing what's in there. And he saw, amongst kind of broken chairs and bits of furniture, he saw a carrier bag, a plastic bag, that was full of personal items. And these were things like letters and photos and birthday cards. And he had a real moment, because he thought to himself, well, it feels wrong that this stuff that clearly meant something to someone is going to be turned into landfill and going to end up in a rubbish dump. And yet he didn't have any connection to this person. So he had a real dilemma: do I leave it or do I take it and rescue it? And in the end, he rescued it. And to this day, he took it home and it's in the back of his wardrobe, and he doesn't really know what to do with it. And then I was telling this story to another friend who told me a story about how they just moved into a new house, into a home, and they just bought a house, and they went into the loft and they found a suitcase, and the suitcase was similarly filled with very personal items, but this time it included wedding certificates and birth certificates and exam certificates and all sorts of things. But it didn't belong to the people they bought from, and it didn't even belong to the people that they bought from. And so again, they had this dilemma: what do you do with this stuff that you don't want, but the actual owner isn't out there, and it feels wrong to just get rid of it? And so it suddenly dawned on me: wouldn't it be amazing if there was a place that existed where you could take these things and where they could be treated with the kind of respect that they deserve? So that's where the idea for the Museum of Ordinary People came from.
Oh, I love hearing that. I am someone who had to clear out my parents' house after they passed away, and it
Yeah,
was agonizing, that
yeah.
process. I had lots of support. I had siblings, I had family, I had friends who were all helping, and still it was agonizing. And I think sometimes about, oh, that kitchen table that no, we donated, and like, where is it now? And it's such a silly thing to focus on an item, but it's not the item, is it? It's like it's the memories.
This is it. It's the memories attached to it. And so, something like a table might just look like an ordinary table to somebody, and maybe somebody it gets to go and live on a life with somebody else and tell and be part of their story. But for your story, um, there's this kind of wonderful thing of, you remember eating at it, and you might remember Christmases at it and birthdays and all the conversations that happened around it. And it's that thing of, if you had the room for it, maybe you would have kept hold of it. But if you haven't, then you've got to get rid of it. And so there's that kind of dilemma of which stuff do you hold on to and which stuff do you let go, and the stuff that you let go of, are you going to at some point just think to yourself, regret it almost? And so it is a real, obviously you can't keep everything, but it is a real dilemma for people going through and the things that you've gone through.
I really felt that part of the book, Jess's process of
Yeah.
emptying her mother's home, was so universal, because we've
Mm.
all been in those moments where we struggle with the obligations we have to the people we love who are no longer here versus the reality of our situations, and just
Yeah.
the, keeping so much stuff, after a while it becomes a burden. I like that particular dilemma she went through. It really resonated, and I thought you handled it beautifully.
Thank
um
you.
Please
You know,
go ahead.
no, I was just thinking about that. There's that moment. The moment in the book where she opens her mum's fridge, and you know it's just food. You couldn't
Oh,
deal with this idea of these were the last things that her mum bought. Her mum had touched everything that was in there,
yeah.
and they also kind of tell the story of the kind of intention of um, you know that you were thinking about tomorrow and the day after and the day after that,
Mm-hmm.
and you're on the other side of this thinking actually there were no tomorrows, and she's never going to get to eat these things or do these things, or so it's a real, and there's the kind of moment where Jess sort of realizes, I suppose, that everything everything that her mum had had contact with is imbued with this sort of sense of it's no longer ordinary because her mum has touched it, and because her mum's no longer there, suddenly everything becomes precious, which obviously leaves you with a real dilemma.
Yeah, because a bottle of salad dressing is not precious, but
No.
when it's the last salad dressing your mother bought,
Yes.
it's it's the most special thing you've ever seen in your life. So yeah,
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
I think this exploration of grief that you have in the book, um, it felt so real and true. And we have this other storyline where we join Jess a year later,
Yeah.
and her grief is still with her. It's still something that she is dealing with, which also was something I felt like you really got to in a very true way, that grief is not something that we just have, one day and we're done, that it is something we carry with us, and it changes us and it shapes us. And I thought that part of the book was also handled very well.
I think it was something that I was very often with grief, we're just meant to kind of get on with our lives. And, people have these ideas of, it should take you 3 months, or it should take you a year, or it should take you a certain amount of time. And so if you don't fit into any of those things, then you kind of feel like you're doing grief badly.
Yeah.
And what I really love about the book is this idea that Jess gets to explore her grief, not just explore it, but also sort of process it and deal with it through the museum. And I suppose it kind of gives her the sense of closure that she's been sort of looking for, but it also opens a lot of doors at the same time. So it's never just the one thing.
What was the first scene that you wrote? Do you remember the first scene that you wrote from the
Oh,
book? And then
I always I always write chronologically.
oh, you do? Oh, interesting. Okay.
Up with, I think I've always done it. I've always been a chronological writer, just because I'm conscious of the idea that there might be scenes or parts of the book that you really desperately want to write, and so you end up kind of fast forwarding lots of things so they can get to the bit that you really want to write. And so because of that, I always make myself wait and say, well, no, every bit of this has got to count, and every bit of this has got to mean something. So and every bit of it has got to be a good bit. That's what I try and keep hold of. So I do write chronologically.
And then what do you do with two storylines? Do you write one and then the other, or do you move back and
No, I move back and forth. Yeah, and
forth? Oh,
because the important thing is to kind of experience the book, hopefully in the way that the reader will experience the book. And so if they're going to go from the past to the present, or the present to the past, then I want to be doing that at the same time, so that we're sort of going through the same thing at the same time.
nice. So Jess keeps a set of encyclopedias that
Yeah,
reminds her of her mother. And those encyclopedias are what lead her to the museum, which becomes a very transformative experience for her. I really love this idea of honoring the possessions of people who have passed. It's really a way of like telling the story of someone who would really be forgotten if you think about
that's
it.
it. Yeah,
And through the things that they love, and then the way that we remember them. And oh, please.
did and what they didn't do. And so it's their kind of passions. And so what I really loved when I was trying to come up with the things that were in the museum is to kind of, I was really aware of trying to have this variety, that kind of variety that kind of speaks to people's passions and people's habits. So it could be it could be a a mug of, a particular mug that somebody liked to have their morning coffee in. It's not so much the object itself, but what it says about the person, and as you say, the story's connected to it.
Do you have a special item that you cherish from someone who is no longer with you? Oh, I think Mike froze again. Thank you to our audience for being so patient with our. Oh, you're back.
Yeah, back as well. Yeah,
Do you
so
have a
patient
special
with
item? Did you hear my question?
no, I didn't hear your question.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Mike, you're winning the award for being the most patient with our technical problems today. And our audience, too, for sticking with us. And I know we have
Thank
some
you.
questions waiting to be asked from the audience, but I wondered if you had a special item that you cherish, that you hold onto, that reminds you of someone in your life.
Well, I've got a few. I've got I think in my family I've become the person who holds on to things. And 30 years ago, my mum was getting rid of a radio, and it was a radio that she bought in 1964.
Oh, wow.
Chin round the table, and the radio would always be on, and it's this really beautiful kind of, it's in a kind of wooden cabinet, and the knobs are broken off, and it's only got long wave and medium wave on it and short wave, I think. um but this radio, and it doesn't even work anymore, and it takes one of those, I don't even remember them, those really big batteries. um it doesn't work anymore, but I really love it because it reminds me of my youth, and so that's definitely one of the things that I would put in the Museum of Ordinary People. And the other thing that I've got, a pair of Wellington boots, so pair of I don't know what you call them in the States, pair of gum.
We call them Wellingtons.
If anyone was clearing the snow, they would use these boots.
Okay.
And um, uh, and so these boots were just remind me of sort of summers digging in the kind of garden and cutting the grass and clearing snow and things like that. So on 50, 60 years old, and I wouldn't wear them anymore. They do mean a lot to me. Yeah.
So that actually is a nice segue. We have a question from Alexandra. And so for people who are new to your books, you wrote a book called Turning 30 and another book called Turning 40. And so Alexandra asks, are there plans to write Turning 50?
Right. This is my readers being really.
Are they being cheeky? Oh, Mike, we lost you for a second.
So yeah, I wrote a book called Turning 30 that was published in the States, actually, and then I wrote 10 years later. Almost day in day out to kind of find out if there's going to be a Turning 50. And my answer is always the same, which is I would love to, but at the minute the kind of books have taken a slightly different direction. And but one day when I get the time and I get the space, more definite than they'll hold me to this now. But yes, thank you very much for asking about it.
We should add that you have, we'll put a link below. You have a Facebook group where people
Yeah.
can join. So your
Yes,
readers
yeah.
join to talk about your books, and we'll include that link below, because they're a dedicated bunch and an excited bunch for your next
They
book.
are very dedicated, which is lovely. You know, as I.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. I know you have another book that came out this summer in the UK
Yeah.
that we have not yet seen here in the US, and it's called A Song of You and Me. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Great.
So here it is. I don't know whether you can see it yet. Can you see it?
Seems like you're frozen, but I know
I am
you'll appear.
frozen. Yes.
You'll
Hopefully,
appear
will
in
I
a
bring?
second. There you
There it
are.
is.
And so when does this come out in the US?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Hopefully. So I'm guessing hopefully this will be out August 2024.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So yes, Song of Me and You. Hopefully it will be coming your way in next summer. So yeah.
And we've included links below to the book to check it out. And obviously, if you want that book to be on every bookshelf in America, go read and buy this book. And we
Please do.
know
Yes, it makes a massive difference.
it matters to publishers and booksellers and whatnot. So we've included links below, so please go check those out. We have another question from the audience. Lucy wants to know what you're currently working on. Do you have anything that you can share?
So, Lucy, I am working on a new book, and I can't really tell you much about it. It's and not because I'm being particularly secretive. It's just it's still not finished, and I always find it quite difficult talking about something that's not finished because um, it's I need to kind of concentrate on finishing it. When
Yeah.
it's finished, I will talk to everybody about it non-stop. But when it's still a work in progress, I feel like I. So yes, I won't even tell you a title. So yeah, but
That's
I
totally
am
fine.
working on something. Yeah, and it will
Okay,
be hopefully it'll
great.
be out in the UK next summer.
Wonderful. You're so prolific, Mike. 20 books. How do you I should say there's a great page on your website. Your website has a lot of personality. When I was looking at that before today's interview, I felt like this is a person with a great spirit and great enthusiasm for what they do. And you have a page where you talk about your writing process. And I wondered, like, how is it that you were so prolific? Is it just nose to the grindstone? Is that what it is? What is it that keeps you just back in the chair doing the work?
It's funny every time I I finish a book, I think to myself, that's it. I want to do something completely different. I want to take loads of time off. I'm going to go sailing or rock climbing or swimming or something, anything that's not sitting in front of the computer. And I think it takes me about 2 or 3 weeks before suddenly I'm thinking, actually, I really like sitting in front of a computer and I really want to get back to telling stories. And I think it's that. I think it's, you know, as soon as I finish a novel, I feel like I'm done, and then I think I feel that kind of desire to tell. I'm thinking of ideas. Ideas are coming to me. I'm trying to work out which one I'm going to go with. So it's that just desire to tell stories, and I think part of it's not just a desire to tell stories, but I think it's also the desire to it's having readers out there um, who want to hear my stories. It's a really good feeling to deliver a new book to my readers, and so they are part of my motivation as well. That kind of you know anytime I think, oh, I'm done with this, I want to do something else, and then I feel myself just thinking, no, I really like telling stories, and I really like having motivation.
Wonderful. So I mentioned at the top that you were an advice columnist for Teen
Yes.
Girl magazine. I can't even imagine the questions that you got. Was it called Ask Mike? What was the column called?
So the magazine was called Bliss, and the column was called Ask Mike, and it was a really strange time. So I'd I'd grown up. There was a magazine in the UK called Smash Hit, so I grew up reading that, and that was kind of like a music magazine for teenagers. And when I was getting into journalism, I could have gone one of many different ways, and then I realised that actually I the writing that I enjoyed most was the writing that had a lot of personality about it, and teen magazines just seemed to be the best place for me to be writing the kind of writing that I wanted to do. And so I've been working freelance for various magazines, and then this opportunity came up to be an agony uncle. And so yes, in the kind of mid to late 90s, teenage girls would write to me with their problems, and I would try my very best to solve them. But thankfully, they were.
that's a longer silence than normal. So thanks everyone with your patience. We really don't know what's going on. I'm sure Mike is saying brilliant things, and it's a loss for all of us not
I've
to
got a
hear
boy.
them. Oh,
Yeah, how do I get a boyfriend? I've got a boyfriend. What do I do with him now? And I don't like this boyfriend. How do I get rid of him? And that was literally all they,
all
permutations
they
on
talked
that.
about.
Yeah.
I love the title Agony Uncle. I'm not sure I've ever
Yes.
heard that before. It sounds
Yeah.
quite perfect. I imagine you wrote lots of letters about boyfriend woes was a form of agony. But I imagine they also wrote in because that's those questions they needed a guy's perspective.
Yes, yeah, very, very much so. They were, it was kind of thing. So it was all very innocent and all very lovely and all just about, because I suppose it's that when you're that age, boys, the opposite sex can feel like that they're is really helpful.
Excellent. Well, is there anything else you want to make sure we know about this terrific book that you have out now, The Museum of Ordinary People?
Well, if the Museum of Ordinary People is your first sort of taste of Mike Gayle, then you should definitely read All the Lonely People, which is on my shelf over there. But you'll find it. You should
Yes.
definitely read All the People.
And we have links below to purchasing all of Mike's books.
Amazing what you're doing in supporting indie bookstores and supporting all new authors. It's really lovely thing that you're doing.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being with us today. I'm sorry we've had so many technical issues. This is a first for us. And we really are grateful for your time and your patience, and to our audience as well for tuning in. Again, in the comments, we have links to Mike's website, his social media, and places where you can purchase his books here in the US as well as in the UK. We'll be back again next Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern time in the United States. We'll be in conversation with Sarah DeVello about her debut novel. And again, please go check out the Museum of Ordinary People and all of Mike's other books. And until we meet again, be well, everyone, and keep reading. Thank you.
Thank you.